let's talk about fake news. Like
oh wow! All right, you're gonna dive straight in. Okay,
yeah, let's talk about fake news and fake content and all that.
What about
shit.
news that I wish was fake?
Yeah,
but
we could talk
it's just
about
scary and true.
Yeah, let's talk about fake news and all that bullshit that's out there in the world. Okay. And how do we control that? How do we know that we can cleanse this stuff up?
Well, we don't know yet. We obviously there's some really, really interesting cases going on. People are trying desperately to get Mark Zuckerberg to show up anywhere to answer some questions. And I don't think he can hold out forever. And he'll have to do it. And I do think the social platforms are going to have to take some responsibility. I mean, the sheer amount of effort and energy they put into their marketing products, to target the right guy at the right moment with the right message on the right platform and all that, and yet they can't identify a piece of inflammatory and clearly fake news. Yeah. I struggle with that. I just don't think it's necessarily in their financial interests to work that out. So I think regulation is going to have to be the single biggest motivator. Right. But on an individual level, I've heard about little things that might work. So, for example, there's a little app or a little plugin you can get to Twitter. I've heard, I haven't tried it, where just before you retweet something, it comes up with a little pop-up that says, "You sure?" Right. And you find once that moment of indignant, self-righteous rage you get when you want to retweet something that's very inflammatory, if someone just gets you just to take one extra second and go, "Are you sure?" Actually, it's proven to have an effect where you go, maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I don't need to spread this kind of this hate in the world. Right. But what you got to remember is what one side calls hate speech, another side calls truth. Yeah. It's not necessarily truth, but the more you try to silence one party, the more they feel righteous in sharing their point of view louder and more vociferously. So I think we've got to deal with, on the tech side and the regulation, they have a responsibility. On the individual side, I think, people obviously feel like they need to shout about their issue because they feel like they're not being listened to. So we need to stop people spreading it, but we also need to help people who have a point of view that perhaps is unpopular or controversial to be able to speak about it. And I think the concept of no platforming, not letting people speak, turns them into martyrs and sort of adds fuel to the fire. So I think that's a dangerous thing to do, is no platform. Yeah,
but I mean, how do you even go through fact checking that quickly before someone posts something? Or I don't know, it could be several minutes, it could be an hour before posting something, but how do you actually do all the fact checking, right? I mean, it's so hard. Even I've done a lot of company analysis during my time when I was in investment banks and hedge funds, and I go through a lot of internet material believing that most of it's true, right? But I can't fact check every single thing out there. Right, and I'm spending all my time looking at that data and trying to figure out how to construct my story to get where I want to, right? But but there's going to be millions of fake shit coming out on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And how do they get even I don't know, algos to figure these things out?
I mean, you mentioned algorithms. I mean, there is a group of people out there saying, individuals should be responsible for fact checking news stories. And I think, well, that's great for individuals who don't have jobs or families and spend all day doing it, but realistically, no. I think if you are someone who has a concern about spreading fake news, then check your sources. Go with sort of well-known and trusted sources that can be sued for libel and sued for slander because they have a business incentive not to lie. Yeah. If you're someone who wants to spread inflammatory news, then nothing's going to stop you. And so that's where we need to stop the news getting to them in the first place. And one of the things to do is to stop calling it news. It's not news, it's opinion, or it's made up. And the second thing is I think there's a sort of two-stage filter. So one is real news that is perhaps not reported in the right way or reports on hearsay. And then there's genuine fake news, which, normally is just so outrageous that there should be a filter that says, hold on a minute, this, use your gut. This doesn't sound right. Yeah. But then you've got this weird little twilight zone of, for example, the BBC has been criticised for sort of creating fake moral outrage. So they go, this group of people on Twitter, the Twitterati, were outraged at blah, 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 blah. And then you follow that tweet and you realise it's just one guy who set up his account last week and has 12 followers. Right. So that doesn't equal to the entire population of Twitter, which is something like 350 million people being outraged. You know, it's one guy, and that's sort of the manufacturing of outrage, and that's difficult as well. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't have any answers for you, but it's a multi-pronged thing. So I think regulation, and we're seeing that's underway. There's a guy on Twitter, funny enough, called Jason Kint, I follow a lot, who sort of monitors the proceedings on that, and it does seem to be going in the right direction in terms of regulation of the tech platforms. I think individuals that want to be, who don't want to be responsible for spreading this stuff, you can practice just due diligence through not fact-checking everything, but just, does it come from a reliable source, and does your gut, you know, say, you know, this sounds credible or this doesn't. But if you're someone who wants to spread inflammatory news to try and win or curry favor for your side of an argument, nothing's going to stop you. And hopefully we, well, I know I don't want to be friends with any of those people, but there's other people who do.
Well, everybody like actually enjoys this fake news and wants to repost it or retweet it, right? I mean, you know,
it's confirmation bias. Everyone likes to see something which confirms something they were already thinking, right? And that's what happens is you suspect, you know, that, I don't know, guns don't kill people, people don't kill people. And if someone posts something to that effect, it sort of justifies your thinking and makes you feel clever. So you go, yes, oh, look, I was right. I was right all along. Everybody loves to feel like they're right and be proven right. Is that right? There's a lot of argument. I mean, particularly in the current climate, in the last few days, we've had this issue happen. And, you know, I keep coming back to, why does America, more so than any other country, with or without restrictive gun laws, have this? And there's two problems. One is there is a fundamental psychological problem underpinning America. There are a lot of deeply, deeply unhappy people there. And also they're able to express that in horrendous ways because of the ease of access to guns. So it's one of the problems of the internet right now is it makes every argument binary. It boils everything down to left or right, right or wrong. You're either with me or against me. There's no middle ground. And so it's either guns or it's mental illness. Well, actually, it's probably a bit of both. And we need to tackle a bit of both. And the irony of the internet is we have this huge web with millions and millions, billions even of nodes and points of view and opinions and blah blah blah, and yet strangely, despite the access to this plurality of opinion, it makes everybody very tribal. It boils them down to, I'm this side or that side, I'm Republican or Democrat, left or right, pro or anti, black or white, and that I find very, very strange. Being that,
well, isn't that the sense of like, well, I guess people want to be attached to something, right? And then and our modern configurations of society is so dispersed, right? Everybody's kind of living, you know, away from family, and you don't even know what you're attached to. You're not even attached to your local community anymore. You don't know who your neighbors are anymore, especially if you live in an urban society. And the only thing that you can attach to is going on the internet and finding people that has the same opinion to you, and then you latch on to that, right? And that, I think that's how, you know, all these things start to happen. Is like everybody's in some way a bit lonely. You know,
well, so what you're suggesting is that community has gone from something that's location-based to point of view-based. So your community used to be people who live near you, and it wasn't based on the idea that you all believe or think the same. So your next door neighbor might vote one way, you might vote another, but you're neighbors, so you get on. Now your neighbor is the person who thinks most like you. That is not something I thought about before, but there's probably a lot to it.
But you probably don't even know what your next door neighbor is thinking about in a political sphere, or, you know,
didn't
community
used to come
building.
up as much. I don't know why, you know, politics has become, or the internet has become, you know, the sort of the modern symposium, I guess, and everyone talks politics. But actually in our real lives, I'm not sure how much people do talk politics.
Yeah, it depends on culture to culture, right? I'm from a culture in Japan, but nobody talks about politics because nobody likes confrontation, right? They don't want to have their opinions disagreed, and that provoking some kind of argument, right? So everybody stays away from the topics of politics. But, you know, I also grew up in the U.S. where everybody wants to talk about politics. You know, they're like, that's a kind of like a common sport that everybody has, right? Let's have an argument.
And in Singapore, there's not too much point in talking about politics.
No, not at all. You can't even say it.
No, I have a fabulous life here, so I'm not really in any position to complain.
No, but yeah, so this kind of like, you know, separation of people and all that, and how do you round people together these days is like put a radical opinion out there, right? And then see who's on your side and who's not on your side. And then that's how it creates all this, like, you know, fake news because you want, even though it's not even there, you just want to make it, create it so that you want to see who's on your side or not. I think that's kind of what's happening.
If you create it and you get a lot of affirmation from it, you feel good. And if you didn't create it, but it affirms something you already believe, you feel good. And as we know, these apps and these platforms have been designed as little dopamine machines, right? So every time you get a little hit, you feel good, and the more hits you get, the better you feel, and it's kind of addictive, like a drug. And,
exactly.
And drugs are generally considered to be a bad thing. So I guess in the same sense, this is a bad thing.
Yeah, but how do we, wind that, or where do we take that from here, right? Because clearly this is a social problem, right? It's not just a content problem or a political problem. It's like a person problem, people problem, right? Are we lonely? Are we getting stupid because we want these dopamine, shots all the time? I mean, what is it that is wrong with us that we can identify and say, okay, let's fix this shit?
Oh man, that's a bigger question than I'm educated or capable of answering. But I find there's a lot of conflict in the discussion. So, for example, one of the things I wonder about is, I see friends posting, about America's gun laws or whatever it is there, and I think, why are you bothered, man? What's it got to do with you? You're like, it's the other side of the world. You don't. It's got nothing to do with you. We're also in each other's business. Yeah. So then I think, well, maybe we should just be concerned about things that are a little closer to home. But then that leads to a certain parochial mindset, where your blinkers are on. And you're only looking at your own little world, and that's a different kind of bubble. Yeah. So if you're not in a sort of global libertarian versus whatever bubble, you're in a local bubble of where all you're concerned about is your community and whatever. What's the right level of interest? I don't know. I mean, I find that I have less time for certain topics since I had a kid because I run my own business, and so these things naturally erode the amount of time and attention I have for certain topics, and keep me grounded. And that my biggest concern these days is, is my daughter healthy and happy and going to school? Is my wife happy? Is my business doing okay? And things like that. And I think that my sphere of attention can only go so far. So maybe people just need more to do in their lives. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the thing.